Teddy, and Barbara Lee speaks for me on today's episode of Two Broads Talking Politics.
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I am on with my co-host, Sophie. Hey, Sophie.
Hey, Kelly.
And I am super excited today to introduce Barbara Lee, who is the representative of the congressional district in the California 13th, has been in Congress for a long time. So hello, Representative Lee.
Glad to be with you. Yeah, really nice.
I am so excited to talk to you. So I thought we could start. About a year ago, I was at the Progressive Caucus strategy session and saw you in a Women of Color panel. And you told a story about inviting Shirley Chisholm to come speak and how that sort of got you started in politics. And so I thought if you could start with that and sort of then lead us into talking about Kamala as the VP candidate and what that means. I would love to start there.
Thank you, Kelly, and thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I was a student at Mills College in the day in Oakland, California, and I had a government class. Believe me, I've only taken one government class in my life. And part of the course requirement was to work in a political campaign, because Mills is a great women's college. And they have, the theory and the practice. They like you to do your academic work, but they also like you to do field work and combine both. So the field work and the assignment was during this presidential campaign was to work in one of the guys' campaign. It was Governor Muskie Humphrey. And, I've never flunked a class before, but I went to Dr. Mullins and I said, flunk me. I am not working in those guys' campaigns. And she said, but come on, this is part of your class. I said, well, sorry, I just have to flunk it. I'll do all the other work, but I'll flunk it. So I was prepared to flunk the class because the reason these white guys didn't speak to the issues that as a young African-American single mother on welfare who was very involved in the community. I wasn't apathetic. I was a community worker with the Black Panther Party. I was president of the Black Student Union in Mills. So it wasn't like I just didn't believe, activism was relevant. But these guys didn't speak to the issues that I thought were important. So at the same time, though, of this course, I decided as president of Black Student Union to invite the first Black woman elected to Congress. And that was Shirley Chisholm from Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And so I invited her and she came, I had a small budget and she came and she spoke. And little did anyone know, but she was running for president. And she said that in her speech. So I went up to her afterwards, and her speech was unbelievable. I wish I could find it. She talked about eliminating poverty. She was against the Vietnam War. She talked about women's reproductive rights. She was one of the first board members of NARAL. She spoke fluent Spanish. She talked about immigrant rights. this woman was brilliant. She was Black and she was progressive. And so I went up and talked to her and told her about this class. And I was about to flunk. And after listening to her, I said, well, maybe I'll reconsider flunking the class. But she took me to task because I had never registered to vote. And, she said, you can't do that. She said, you've got to first register to vote. She said, and I would love to have you as part of my campaign. And I said, well, that would help me from flunking the class. So maybe, but I really wasn't inspired by her. But believe you me, this was so I could pass the class. So I went back and I talked to my professor and I said, okay, I found a candidate. You didn't tell me that Shirley Chisholm was running, right? The media didn't tell us that. It was total, I say blackout or whiteout from the media. And so my professor said, well, yeah, she's running. And I said, well, why didn't you tell us? So I said, well, how do I do this? Tell me how to get involved and I'll go on and do the class assignment. She said, Barbara, this is up to you. Part of the class is trying to figure it out. So I called up two other students I knew, and we literally ended up organizing the Northern California Shirley Chisholm presidential primary out of my class at Mills College. I got an A in the chorus, and I went to Miami as a Shirley Chisholm delegate, and the rest is history. But we became very close friends. She was a mentor through all of my campaigns, she came out when I ran for the California Assembly, Senate, and Congress to help me. I've got pictures of her and I at walking precincts, doing phone banking. I mean, she just did everything she could to help me. And she was truly a bold, visionary, brilliant woman who had to deal with the intersection of racism and sexism constantly. And I was with her a lot. So I saw that. And, you know, I worked for our great warrior, Ron Dellums, for 11 years. So I didn't work for Shirley Chisholm formally on Capitol Hill, but I was able to be with her. And she mentored me and helped me understand the dynamics on Capitol Hill, where there were probably three African-American women who were three African-Americans or four who were chiefs of staff at that point on Capitol Hill. I was one of them. And so she explained to me how sexism and racism was prevalent on Capitol Hill and even within Congress and with members of Congress. And I saw her each and every day, how she had to deal with all of the challenges. And she was a role model. And fast forward now to Senator Harris, of course, I endorsed her when she ran for president. I was so proud. I was the first member of Congress to endorse her. And her colors were orange and yellow, same as Shirley Chisholm colors. And we campaigned hard because Kamala always recognized it was because of Shirley Chisholm and Jesse Jackson, who really paved the way, and Barack Obama, so that she could run as an African-American person of color, but also as a woman. And so Kamala understands the historic moment she's in, and she is such a brilliant person in terms of her humility. She's brilliant in her humility, recognizing that she just didn't get there by herself. And she's trying to bring other women along with her now. And we're going to win if everybody votes November 3rd.
Yeah, I love that. So, and then talk to me some about watching her in this debate. So seeing what Shirley Chisholm had to do, knowing what you've had to do in the public eye, we could sort of see it on Kamala's face almost, right? Like this line that she had to walk to appear certain ways and not certain ways. And, you know, what is that like in the public eye, doing that in a debate that she did so masterfully?
Yeah, and Black women have to do this day in and day out, all the time. And I remember there was a book written about anger, and the author of it talked to me about how do you deal with anger and not being, and she had observed me in certain situations where I should have been furious. And because of being a Black woman and recognizing what that would mean, that I wouldn't be able to get my message across, I had to be firm and not take any mess. But I couldn't go ballistic because because people wouldn't listen if I had gone ballistic. And so Kamala, I mean, look, first of all, let me tell you, Pence was so disrespectful and so arrogant, trying to get her to answer I don't like to curse publicly, but you know what I'm talking about, his question. Yeah. And then the doggone, what was her name? Sandra, the woman who was doing the moderating. Mm-hmm. I mean, she kind of like fell into Pence's trap as a white woman. I mean, it was like she had no respect. She let Pence just get off the hook. And Kamala never was able to reclaim all of her time. And that just shows you the racism, you know, and the white supremacy that is still so embedded in people's consciousness, whether they recognize it or not. And so that's what I saw, and she handled it very well. And she, you know, like when she would say, look, you know, she'd give him that look, and every Black woman knew what that look meant, right? And she was surgical in how she responded. And she wouldn't let him get off the hook with anything. And she pushed back in a way that was very forceful and powerful, but yet was able to not go ballistic. Like I felt like, I mean, I was going ballistic.
I was, yeah.
I was cursing, I was punching, I was like, ooh, it just was like awful. So she handled it very well. And I think the country knew, first of all, and I responded to the press by saying she's going to be herself. And she was herself. She was authentic. She was smart. She answered the questions directly. And the questions that they tried to jam her on, she was able to navigate in a way that was brilliant, I thought.
So you have a pretty progressive record, and you've endorsed Joe Biden. You endorsed him back in April. I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the progressive case for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Can you tell us a little bit sort of about what progressives can look forward to in a Biden-Harris administration?
Yeah. And, I co-chair the Progressive Caucus. I mean, as a Black woman, you're progressive by nature, first of all. Look at Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, all the Black women who were so progressive, they had to shatter these structures that we still have to finalize in terms of cracking systemic racism and gender equality. But we have to just keep doing that. And I think that as we move forward with Kamala as a progressive, we have to recognize that look at her record, and you look at her Senate record. And I know some progressives are 100% pure, as I am 99.9% of the time. She supported the Green New Deal. She supported the MORE Act. She's the lead sponsor. That's the cannabis, legalization, expungement of records, restorative justice bill. So she has led on many progressive issues that progressives champion. And so to have her in the White House, whether Biden is as progressive as she is or not, I don't think is the issue right now. The issue is we will have someone in the White House who came from the most progressive part of the country. I mean, Oakland and Berkeley and San Francisco on criminal justice reform, on cannabis reform, on income inequality, on racial justice, on the environment. I mean, come on. She, really gets it. She knows how to navigate, though, and negotiate and make sure that our progressive values are not compromised and policies, but also has to work with everybody who may not be as progressive as her. And I have to do the same thing in the House. And, and it's a skill that I learned from Ron Dellums and Shirley Chisholm. And it's a skill that Kamala has had, and I've known her since the late 80s, that she has always utilized in her work.
So you famously were the only member of Congress to vote no on the authorization of the use of force after the September 11th attacks in 2001. We have now been in Afghanistan for 19 years, as of a couple days ago. What does a Biden-Harris administration need to do moving forward to make sure that we don't, continue this blank check for use of force, that we withdraw from the Middle East in a way that makes sense, that doesn't leave instability? What do you want to see going forward?
Yeah, Kelly. Well, that authorization was 60 words, and everybody voted for it but me. It was a blank check that set the stage for perpetual war. Okay. It's been used over 40 some times in about 19 countries, not related to 9/11, and it's been used for domestic surveillance and spying in the United States. So this is outdated, first of all. It wasn't passed for this purpose, even though the reason I voted against it, because I knew it was going to be used for this purpose because it was so overly broad. But also, we're still there, and this is the longest war in American history. So same with Iraq. So I have every single year put forth an amendment to repeal that. The other issue is Congress has the constitutional responsibility to debate and authorize war, not any president. So you never give the authority over Democrat or Republican. I mean, President Obama used it also, and I was as critical with him as I was with Bush and with Trump. And so we have to repeal that. I built the bipartisan support to repeal it. We passed it through the House a couple of times. Gets stuck where? In the Senate. And guess who threatens to veto the defense authorization bill? 45 in the White House. So that's why this election is one of the reasons it's so important, because in the Democratic Party platform, and I was on the drafting committee, there's a clear section about ending these never-ending, endless wars and how we do that. And the Biden team, we work to negotiate the language in the platform, and it clearly says we need to repeal these and get back to putting Congress in the mix. It took 19 years, though, just to get to this point. This is a marathon. This is tough. Democracy is a tough framework to negotiate, but we have to do it. And it takes a while. It's a long time, 19 years, to get the public to rally around why we needed to repeal it, to get their members of Congress to say, oh, yeah, you're right.
So looking forward a little bit, obviously, because of 2016, I'm knocking on wood here. I'm not saying anything's going to happen, but things are looking, pretty good for Democrats. It looks like we're going to keep the House. We may win the presidency, and it's even possible that we could win the Senate. Can you tell me a little bit about, in our fantasy world in which we win all three?
In the real world, Sophie, that's
in the real world. I know, I'm just, I'm like
superstitious.
What would you be most excited about working with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic Biden-Harris administration on passing?
Well, the first thing is this election is truly a matter of life and death with the COVID-19 pandemic. The first thing, and the Biden administration has said so, first thing they're going to tackle is take leadership on tackling this pandemic. 213,000 people have died now. I mean, disproportionately Black and brown people. I mean, this is outrageous. And the lack of leadership by Donald Trump and Vice President Pence have allowed for all these deaths to occur. So the first thing is we have got to, as Speaker Pelosi says, crush the pandemic. So whatever that takes, I'm a member of the Appropriations Committee. So we'll fight for the funding, and I know the Biden team will not veto any funding measure. We've got to work to deal with this pandemic immediately. Secondly, we've got to create economic growth and create good paying jobs. And the Biden team, they've come up with how they are going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs in new industries, such as in the green industry, in the solar industry. I mean, they can do that right away. We need a House, Senate, and White House to agree that this is a priority in terms of economic growth. So I want to see it's going to have to be like a recovery plan like we did when President Obama was in. It has to make sure that we ensure that state and local governments are funded, that our teachers are funded, our schools, and housing has to be a big part of this infrastructure. So we have to have a big bill, a comprehensive bill that's going to not only stop the bleeding, but also create economic stability, because this pandemic has created a health disaster and an economic disaster for our essential workers, for working men and women, for low-income people, for people who are poor, for unresourced people. It's havoc out here, and people are living on the edge. So we have got to do a job creation bill. And then we have to address systemic racism and get the criminal justice bills passed. And of course, I'm a big supporter of reparations, repairing the damage, and get HR 40 signed into law. And my bill, HR 100, calling for a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission, which over 40 countries have done after genocides, crimes against humanity, bringing forth the body of abuses that in the African-American community, for example, 401 years ago, when the first enslaved Africans came to America. We've got to have this day of reckoning in the United States so we can move forward in a truth-telling moment and then institute policies to transform this country with racial equity at its core. So I want to see the Biden, and we were able to get that commitment in the platform also, that they would support this. So that's the three kind of big, broad areas that I want to see them take on. And believe you me, I'm going to push them to do that as a progressive. Being a progressive, they know me. They know I'm going to push the envelope.
I love it. All right. So I want to live in that future that you just described. So give us our marching orders. What do we do for the next 25 days to make sure that we can set this up so that you and the other members in the House can get these things done?
We have to have a decisive victory on November 3rd. So the shenanigans and the voter suppression that they're engaged in don't work. That means all of us have to vote early. That's the first thing. Request your absentee ballot, depending on what state you're in, and get it to the drop boxes, take it in, make sure whatever your state laws are, follow those laws and get it in. But we also have to recognize some people still want to vote at the polling place. So make sure that we have, that your polling places meet all the health standards, and ask them for people who want to go to the polls, make sure 6 feet, mask, hand sanitizer, make sure they're set. And we have to make sure that we watch these. I've been an observer in elections throughout the world for fair and free elections, right? So this time, guess what? We have to monitor our own. So I know here in Alameda County, our voter registrar's office, they want people to volunteer to help them. So call your voter registrar's office and see what they need you to do. This is going to be a major volunteer effort. And make sure you know the laws, how you find out if your mail-in ballot or if you or vote at home, whatever you want to call it, is in. Has it been registered? So there are websites where you can where you can go online in your states, or you can call and find out if your ballot is in. So we've got to be woke, vigilant, and making sure that every vote is cast and counted. And any indication of Russian interference through the platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, let those companies know, and let your members of Congress know. Because last time, you know how they went after the Black community, they tried to divide different groups against each other. They told lies. They really created a destabilized kind of community because we didn't know what to believe. And it was the Russians, and it's been proven it was the Russians, the bots and all. So make sure you stay alert and watch these social media messages. And if you see any shenanigans, get in touch with those companies or your members of Congress and demand that they pull these things down. And so I think, we have to win. So vote. And anyone on the fence, please just know that this is a matter of life and death if you haven't decided to vote for the Biden-Harris team, because there's a clear contrast. Either you want to live and you want your family to live or not. And that is really true, So between now and November 3rd, all hands on deck.
All right. Well, we've got our marching orders, and I have to be able to say this at some point. Barbara Lee speaks for me, so we should go. And I have to say, I've seen you at a few different events, where you've been on stage or something. It seems like every time someone shouts up to you, Barbara Lee speaks for me.
Kelly, let me tell you, that started right after 9/11. I couldn't travel because of security concerns. And when I finally was able to, I went to my college, my alma mater, Mills College, right? And I walked in with heavy duty security, and there were like 1,000 students there. And this was the first appearance after 9/11. They started clapping and said, Barbara Lee speaks for me, Barbara Lee speaks for me. And since then, it's taken off. It's just like everywhere.
I love it.
Well, these were young students at my alma mater. Yeah. So thank you very much.
That is wonderful. Well, Representative Lee, thank you so much for joining us. This was really fun. I was so excited that we got to talk to you.
Thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate it. And if anyone's here in the Midwest, my son lives in Bloomington, Illinois with my 2 little granddaughters. So wherever you are, just make sure you elect Democratic members of Congress, the Senate, and the White House. And I know there's a great candidate running in Bloomington. So I want to make sure.
Yes, there is. Well, okay. I'm in Chicago. Sophie's in Madison. Okay. So we got the Midwest covered, and we are going to blanket it blue this year.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.